Cheers, thanks very much, and welcome everybody. Actually, when I was writing the speech, I had a sort of quick look about what a chief executive does, and I read an article that apparently they're thinking of replacing chief executives. Well, they're thinking of replacing laboratory rats with chief executives. And apparently there's three reasons. The first reason is there are more chief executives than there are laboratory rats. The second reason is you can get chief executives to do things that no self-respecting laboratory rat would do. But the most important one is that apparently people don't get as attached to chief executives as they do to laboratory rats. And the sort of second thing, that as I was driving up, a colleague of mine, Peter Homer, was on the Radio 4, I don't think picked up on Radio 4, getting a grilling about poor performance. And what it reminded me of the last time I gave a talk, I've told some people about this, to a body like this. It was actually to, Peter invited me to give a talk to a big group of GPs about the future of general practice. And at the end of it, one of the GPs came up to me and said, Derek, thanks for that talk. I'm 55 years of age. I didn't know whether to work to 65 or what to do. I've been doing this job for 30 years or so, but having listened to you talk about the future of general practice, I know what to do. And I asked him, so what are you going to do? He goes, I'm going to retire. Now, what I don't want is anyone at the end of this thing to retire, actually, at all. If you take one message away from me and my talking today, is how much actually we value what you do. As Terry said, actually, we can do all the strategy and all that, but actually, you're the people on the ground that deliver. And you do an absolute brilliant job of that, and you do a really important job. It's a real shame that, tell me if you can, but it's a real shame that for whatever reason society doesn't reward you in the way that it should, and it chooses to reward other sectors in a different way. I don't understand that. It's just how things are. But you do a really important job, and the reason I know that, and some of you may think that, is that you deal with people who are the most vulnerable in society, and you often deal with them at their worst. I know from personal experience, I don't want to go into too much, but I had a brother who had a breakdown about 20 years ago. Now, I can't remember often what I was doing last week, and my wife claims I never remember anything which she's told me, but I can remember the support worker's name who looked after my brother. And when my son had some problems with his mental health, I can still remember, still in contact with the support worker who helped him. So you do a really important job, and if you take one thing away from today, is how much we value what you do and how important it is that you do it. And what also inspires me as sort of chief executive and makes me proud to be here is my background is roughly, although I've worked in the private sector, is roughly 20 years in the NHS, and we used to have a saying in the NHS about services, and it is, would you be happy for your mum, your dad, your son, your daughter, your father to be in those services? And I have to say, I would. I've not always been able to say that. I remember once, probably one of the worst days of my life in my career, in my professional career, was about 15 years ago when I was responsible for all health services in Lincolnshire, which was a terrible job, I can tell you. And I remember meeting a nice couple. They were in their 70s, lovely people. They had a child with Down syndrome. And they said to me, Derek, or Mr. Bray, we've come to see you because we're getting to a stage where we just can't physically look after our daughter. She's 40, we can't physically look after her. All I want from you is, can you provide services that mean that she gets as good care as we can give her? And I couldn't look him in the eye and say, we can, because we couldn't. What I could do actually with St Anne's is, I could actually say, yes we can. Actually, I could even go a little bit further. I could say, we can provide better care than you do. And I believe that. I actually believe that because I've seen some of the care that we provide. And what inspires me, what I really like about being a chief executive of St Anne's, and you have your bad days, when you don't get such a good CQC report or something happens and you think, how did that happen? But the really good days, particularly when you go out and visit services, and you find out staff who've gone the extra mile. Some of the reasons about being a chairman or a chief executive is that sometimes we deal with all the bad news, and sometimes it's really nice when we get out and see some of the good news. And what I see day in and day out is staff who go the extra mile. I could give lots of examples, but there's been loads of examples when I've talked to parents and carers who say, example of, my child's ambition was to go on holiday and you've made that possible. Or, my son's ambition was to ride a horse and you've made that possible. I think it was in the North East where they made a helicopter ride possible, and that, you know, and things like that. I also, and it's this time of year actually, because we get towards Christmas. Remember I went around last Christmas, I think it was to Bradford, and I was talking to the Bradford staff and some of our clients. I actually got quite envious of their social life. I think they've got a better social life than I have at Christmas, because you were taking them on various things. So thank you for that, and it's really important that, you know, we get the opportunity to thank you, because sometimes, you know, what I suspect you hear from us a lot is, have you filled out that risk register, or have you filled out that, you know, that latest Datex report or something or other. So we really do thank you for that. And the chair mentioned about the external thing on the CQC report, the high score we've got. What he didn't say, I think it's really important, just to add to that. When I read these reports, what's really nice about them is not just the sort of scoring of good, but some of the comments. And what almost always, or I'd say about 1 out of every 3, 1 out of every 2 comes out of the CQC report, is it's like visiting somebody's home. And just think how wonderful that is. You know, that it says it's like visiting somebody's home when I expect this. Also, we could use the sort of 95% figure, but the figure I like to use actually is the fact that of the 150 services we've got now, about when we met about this time last year or just beforehand, about 70 were good. Now there's only 4 that are not good, and we're extremely confident when those 4 get inspected. I'm looking at Susie and Sarah. We are extremely confident that those 4 will be good. Now that is a fantastic achievement, particularly as, and this is the important thing, is that because of the financial squeeze that's on this sector, and you only have to read the papers this morning. If you read the papers this morning, you'll see that probably the biggest provider of what we do in the country has just defaulted on some debts that it has. So it's a pretty difficult place. What's happening across the country is that last year, as Terry said, the scores for good were about 71%. They've now gone down to about 65%. So where we're going upwards, the rest of, if you like, the rest of the sector in general is going downwards. So it's a really fantastic achievement, and it's not that we've achieved, you know, it's actually what you guys do day in and day out. And I think it is a fair, actually, representation of the excellent care that you give. So please, and I'll apologise because I'm sure during the next year I'll hack you off, or we'll hack you off by asking you to do things. But underneath it all, we do really value what you do. And the one figure that I'm spending a lot of time on looking at is our turnover figure. And Andrew, who's acted up as our Director of HR, will tell you this, and he's done a lot of work on this, and the HR department done a lot of work about how we can reduce turnover. Our turnover is quite low in comparison with the rest of the sector, but that's the most important number that I look at the moment. It's actually why staff leave, and can we do anything about it? And can we fill vacancies? And we're doing a lot of work on that. It wouldn't be I wouldn't be true if I didn't talk something a little bit about finance. When we met this time last year, the organisation was on to lose. I'd sort of had 4 years of losing money and not paying staff pay increases. This year we have paid a modest pay increase, and we're going to make a small profit, which is a real achievement, given the fact, as I pointed out, that the rest of the sector seems to be going the other way in terms of losing money and so on, really. And we want really to continue that and work with you for that. Now, when I talked about how we would do this last year, I said the one thing we wouldn't do was sort of slash and burn, and the trustees just wouldn't allow that. And as Terry said, the trustees are very clear on quality. That's the first thing they look at. It's the first thing they want to know about. We'd look at ways of doing that didn't affect quality, and in some cases that could increase quality. Some of the ways we've looked at that is and thanks to particularly the managers and the staff involved, are things like use of bank. And what we've seen this year is that the use of bank has gone down by about 30%. I think it's 25 to 30%, which is a major achievement. But I'd love to get ourselves into a situation, and a real challenge is where we hardly ever have to use bank staff. Because bank staff aren't as good as our staff, they don't know the service as well as our staff. And actually the ideal position would be rarely to use a member of bank staff, and that's something we're going to, you know, obviously we're going to work on. The other thing we focused on is, and again this is where you've been really, really helpful in the work that you do, is actually St Anne's has not been that good at going to commissioners and saying, do you know what, you're not paying us enough. We've not been that great at it. Actually, I should employ my daughter. She's great at telling me that I'm not giving her enough money. So what we've done this year, we sent along Susie and Helen, our new finance director, and to talk, and along with with our regional managers, of course, and some of the area managers, to talk about that. And I think we've raised about £1 million this year in increased revenue from those sorts of conversations. And places like Doncaster, I think we've raised about £300,000 for local authority in additional funding, and that makes sure it breaks even. We're also doing another thing that we've done, and the chair's very keen on this, is I think in the past we've been a bit guilty of just buying in work, i.e. just getting in work. I think the chair's got a sort of phrase around, I think it's turnover is vanity, profit is sanity. And we've been guilty in the past of getting in work at a loss. And now we've looked at virtually every service, and we're trying to bring every service into that it's making some money. And certainly in the future, what we won't be doing is basically bidding for work that either we can't do at the right quality or we can't do it at a very small profit. We're not into making large profits. We don't have shareholders, but we do need to make some profits for things like pay rises and things like training. And the other approach that we spend a lot of time on, some of you may be seeing this around the finance side of things, and it came very much from staff and a kickback from our unions as well, and listening to them, was that we spend about £8 million, I think, in buying in things like carpets, boilers. You'd be amazed at the number of boilers we get. I mean, it's amazing, and so on. But about £8 million, and we weren't getting any discounts on that sort of on that. And if you think about it, if you bought a boiler at home, it's quite an expensive thing to do. You wouldn't go off and do that without asking getting two or three quotes, and we've not been doing that. So we're focusing basically on things like that. So we've had a good year in that we've moved really well in terms of quality. Or you've had a good year, you've done it, not me. Although someone says to the chief executive, if it goes wrong, you get the blame. So if it goes right, it's got nothing to do with you. You might as well take the credit. So, but you've actually done all of this. It's your hard work in terms of both the quality and the finance. So thank you for that. Thank you for your hard work. There are some buts in this. I'll just talk briefly about the things we need to focus on, I think, for the next year. The chair in his talk, I think, made a really good point about making sure we've got a sort of settled senior executive team and trust board. And what we've done is actually look at ourselves and say, where do we have some issues? And there's a couple of areas. So for instance, one of the areas is housing. Both on the executive team, although we're a housing association, both on the executive team and on the board of trustees, we didn't have that expertise, and we brought it in. We're also looking to bring in some finance expertise on the trustee side, and potentially also some clinical stuff. So we've actually had a quite hard look at ourselves and said what are the skills we need to take St Anne's forward over the next few years. And hopefully, certainly the SMT, hopefully that will all be settled fairly soon, really. The sort of second area that we're looking at, again, is around quality. And again, the trustees were very keen that we do this. We're scoring good on the CQC reports, we're doing well. But one of the problems that we have, and all organisations like us have this problem, is that because I think the distance between, I think it's Gateshead and the furthest place might be Huddersfield, the furthest place we're apart, I understand it's about 160 miles. And we have 150 services. So it's very difficult to standardise good practice, particularly in the area, and there is some really good practice, but particularly in the area of involving the client and involving their relatives and carers. And we've got someone in to look at what we do and to look at best practice. And one of the things we're going to be doing this next year is actually just rolling that out for everybody, so that basically so that we can improve in that area, and I think that's a real area to focus on. We'll keep obviously focusing on the finance and keep with that, because that is a big area. We want to keep in a position where on a regular basis we don't have the position we had a few years ago, for that 3 or 4 years, of not being able to pay staff pay rises. We're very keen that we must do that, and we must keep a real focus on the finance. Again, and I said this last year, and I think Mark Fenley's done a really good job this year, but his IMT is going to be a big area for us. And again, it is a weakness for us. We've recruited someone onto the board of trustees who's got some expertise in this area. We're hoping to use some capital receipts that we're getting in to persuade our board of trustees to invest some more money in IMT, but they'll want a really good plan. And we really want to really spend it on updating some of our systems, because some of our systems are quite antiquated and quite old. So managers, for example, spend a lot of their time rostering. I was told up to 7-8 hours a week rostering, whereas we know we can buy in good rostering systems that do that straight away. Not only do they do that, but they transfer that information to payroll, which allows payroll to pay people quicker, and it also allows us to bill people and make sure everybody gets billed. So we'll be spending a lot of money on IMT systems, which make your jobs hopefully a lot easier. Also, in terms of IMT, we all know that more and more technology is being used in our area. I mean, I was quite staggered, just to have a personal example where someone I know wanted to make sure their father-in-law, who was 95, could stay at home, and they fitted in video cameras, as well as getting nurses and help like that. But by fitting in video cameras, they could look at any time, to make sure he was all right on their mobile phone, and that cost only £650. So we, I think, really must now look at IMT and new ways of working, because if we want to stay the same, then we have to basically change, unfortunately, to stay the same. Finally, and again, I won't go into too much detail about this, but we really need this year with you and with the Board of Trustees to put in place a really good strategy. We're doing bits of that, so we had a good strategy about how we saw the quality, about the finance. We're already looking at, actually, is being a charity still the right thing to be? I don't have a view on that, but we've commissioned a bit of work on that. But we really need, I think, a really good 3-year strategy about how we get through some quite uncertain times and what we do. And hopefully when I talk to you this time next year, you'll be really, really aware of that. So I'll sort of finish there, but just as I finish, I'd just like to thank some people, really. Firstly, I'd like to thank the SMT that I work with, really. Someone said of me that I wasn't very good as a chief executive, but I was very good at getting good people around me, and I think that's probably a lot of truth in that. I work with some really good directors who are doing some really fantastic work, so I'd really like to thank them. I'd particularly like to thank John, who our Master of Ceremonies. John's been with St Anne's for 24 years, and he's been a real stalwart at St Anne's. He's done a great job, and he's doing a great job right up to the last minute, and I think we're all going to miss John. I miss the work that he's done, and I think if we could just give John a quick. I'd also like to thank the organisers of today as well, really. I mean, this just thing runs like clockwork, possibly because I'm not involved in it. They just tell me what to do. They just probably tell me to just sort of turn up. But just really thank the admin team for doing, yet again, another fantastic bit of work. I'd also like to echo John's thoughts about the trustees and just say a few words, really. The trustees do a fantastic job. They are not paid, and it is a really, really at times stressful job. It is really an important job. They're responsible for over £40 million. They're responsible for staff of over 1,500. And more, and you only have to see what happened at the kids' company to see the responsibilities that they have and the way that they carry. Now, they don't do this, as I say, for financial reasons. They do it because they really care about the most vulnerable people in society. They put a lot of time into things like audit committees that we don't see, or to other committees, or just being there to give general advice to. And I'd really like to really on a personal basis thank them for the support to me, but also to support St Anne's. And they've also been doing it for long periods of time. The chairman, I think, has been doing it for 10 years. We also, unfortunately, I don't think John Tate's here today, but I think John's been doing it for over 12 years. That is a real commitment, particularly given the responsibility. I used to work in NHS, and actually it's really interesting that non-executives in the NHS and non-executives in public companies do not bear the responsibility that the trustees here do. I hope I haven't scared you, by the way. So I'd really like to thank the trustees. But finally, and I did start off by saying, and I hope none of you want to retire, but I did start off by saying that the most important people in this organisation are you. And if you take one message away from this, although we don't always show it, we do value what you do. We really do. I keep making this offer, but very few people take me up on it. If you are ever at headquarters, please do come in and see me. Just, the door's always open. Just come in and say, Or if you're doing something that's quite interesting, at work, should I say, if you're doing something quite interesting at work, and you'd like me to see it, please just give me a ring. I want the SMT team members to give me a ring. And just before I hand off, you'll be happy. I need to get to say something. Again, on the quality side of things, not only are I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, I didn't make this mention. Not only is the fact that we've done really well in terms of CQC and local authority scores, what's starting to happen is that we're starting to get some national and international recognition. We've won a big international award for the work we've done on PBS. The work that we're doing on end-of-life care, again, has won national awards and is being taken up by NHS England. Their policy is basically being written on the back of our policy, and we're actually writing their policy for them. And that is an absolutely fantastic achievement. And recently, they gave a national presentation, and Nottingham University Hospital are coming to talk to us. And anyone who knows Nottingham University Hospital, they're a teaching hospital. They're very sniffy about quality. They don't talk to other non-teaching hospitals. They only talk to hospitals like John Radcliffe at Oxford, or Harvard School of Medicine and things like that. So for them to ask to come over and see us is a massive compliment. And I've just been told this morning that on the National Care Awards, one of our nurses has been nominated for that. So those are really big achievements for an organisation like St Anne's, and you should be really proud of you. Now you'll be happy because that's the end of it. Thank you so much for your time.